let's hop right in to talking about nutrition. The first thing you have to understand is that we are an animal, the Homo sapiens, that are coded for scarcity and danger. You got to think back all the way to Paleolithic times, and that's where we derived our coding. Food was very difficult to come across, and as animals, we're not very strong. We don't have the armor, the built-in weapons like horns and claws or spitting poison, all those things that a lot of other animals have. Our senses aren't even that good. We can only see a very short spectrum of light or hear a very short wavelength of sound. So we were very vulnerable, which made us have to stick together. But to go get food, we would have to leave that safety of the camp and go get food. So we needed a very strong motivator to go out and get this food. And so we all get a very strong feeling of discomfort when we haven't eaten. And then on the other side, when we get the food, we get a very positive feeling. And so that was there to motivate us to go out in danger and get that food. We also have other factors like the satiation level, the satisfaction level kicks in late for us. And our stomachs can stretch so we can keep consuming more food. These are all mechanisms designed to keep us alive for the environment of danger and scarcity. If you think about, imagine us on the savannas and we come across a fig tree, we would have to eat as many of those figs as quickly as possible before the baboons showed up and took them all, because they're a much stronger animal. So we have this almost panic response to eating, and we have a very strong attraction to high caloric foods, high energy foods. So sugar, so sweet things are one of those. Carbohydrates or glucose, which covers sugar and carbohydrates. And I want to get as much of that as possible because that gives me very quick energy. And the body in those times needed to be able to flee or defend itself. That was a constant daily struggle. There are hormones that circulate our body, and there's one in particular called ghrelin, and that is the hunger hormone. That's what gives us a sensation of hunger. The sensation of hunger isn't automatically a need for nutrition. It's not that I've run out of energy. Most of us have enough energy stored in their bodies that we could last several weeks or even months. So this hormone is just motivating us to go in. So it's a feeling that comes over us, activated by ghrelin. And the body typically balances it in its rhythm of the day to when you usually eat. So if I eat a meal at 9 a.m., around 9 a.m. I'm going to get a release of ghrelin and I'm going to feel hungry. The other thing to know is that when our body is digesting food, that's the most important thing for the body. So it stops all other processes. And so there's some very healthy process the body goes through that stops. There's one that's called apoptosis. And it's when the body purges all these old dormant cells. But it only does it in a fasted state. The other interesting thing to note is that our willpower, if we're trying to conserve or change the way we eat, our willpower, the part of our brain that houses willpower, shuts off in times of stress. And I'll explain why that's important in a moment as we get deeper into this. Because we're now using food as a masking technique. I'm going to open it up for questions in a minute. And if you're on Instagram, there's a little button at the bottom that looks like two cards with a question mark in it. At any point, you can throw your questions in there, and then I'll get to them when I get to that part at the end of the talk here. So hop in and ask the questions at any time. On Facebook, just write them in the comments. I will try and read them if I can. Okay. So now we understand that we're coded for for Paleolithic times, 10,000 years ago. For a very short time, we've been living in our modern environment. And this civilization, what it's done is try to eradicate those sensations we get from our coding. So we have an abundance of food now, and we have refrigeration, so we can make food last longer. You know, we can get food at any time of the day. There's 24-hour delivery of food. Even now, you know, we're still access to food, even more so. And our bodies are not, they're reacting to that. So they're not as healthy as they should be, because our society has built up as a reaction to this coding. It wasn't until the Industrial Revolution that we ate 3 meals a day. Before that, we'd eat once a day. And some of these cultures that I go and live with, they only eat once a day. So they go either at dawn hunting or dusk hunting, and then they'll come back and they'll prepare that food and they'll eat that food, and then the next day they'll do the same. Or they'll even skip a day and go hunting the day after. So we live now with this conditioning that we should eat multiple meals a day. Our body's actually very, very efficient at conserving and storing energy. So I get signals of discomfort if I start to use too much energy. A lot of you might have experienced it when you work out and you get that feeling of discomfort, or you don't want to do it. That's this coding saying, are you sure you want to use these very valuable calories, because we don't know when you'll get more? That's what this coding thinks. We don't know where we're going to get our next meal from. So let's conserve and let's store as much as possible. In addition to the Industrial Revolution, getting 3 meals a day, and what happened there, that's the first time in the history of our civilization that we had to be on a timetable. And so we had to coordinate workforces. And so the idea was to have regulated meal breaks. And lunchtime started, so everyone could break for lunch at the same time. Then there was the family meal, so they'd all go home and still eat with the family. And then there was a morning meal to come and the factory figured that people needed energy, so they would suggest a morning meal. So there's 3 meals a day started there. The other thing that's changed in our society is that the size of the plate has increased. So we've got bigger plate sizes, so then we eat more food. We also, with industrialization, were able to mass produce foods that our body desires. So these high energy foods. So carbohydrates became very, very cheap, and sugars became very, very cheap to produce because our body desires them, because they were not easy to come by. Sugar at one point was one of the most expensive commodities, and which is why we celebrate our birthdays with cakes. It's because that was the one time a year we had sugar. Then sugar became very, very cheap, and it started to enter into the food. All our food sources now pretty much contain sugar. If you look on the packaging, the labeling, there's sugar in nearly everything we eat, and that's just because it's become cheap. The other thing about most carbohydrates is that they are shelf stable, and so it's very easy to ship them, and they can last a long time. So it's very easy for us to hang on to them. Whereas fresh food is perishable and it's expensive, and if we don't eat it right away, it goes bad, and then we wasted money. So people tend to stick to shelf stable, and the food industry has become very good at producing everything to an addictive level. So there's just the right amount of salt, just the right amount of sugars in there, just the right amount of fats that we become attracted. McDonald's is fantastic at this. So it pumps out pheromone scents that attracts us. Those hamburgers are a perfect balance of these salts and sugars and carbohydrates and fats. And we become attracted to it, addicted to it. So our environment that we live in now isn't aligned with our coding, what we're designed for, but it's a reaction to it. So the food industry isn't this evil empire, it's just reacting to what our coding is. But we are able to override that coding. We're able to understand that I'm being attracted to certain foods or the amount of food because of a primitive coding. So then I can make a choice. Does that choice align with what I need or align with my goal? And then I can make the decision from that place. But we're also manipulating ourselves. So that feeling that we get, that rush that we get of positive feelings when we eat sugars or high caloric foods, they're stimulants to us. And so now we're using them throughout the day to gain energy. So I'm going to drink caffeine or I'm going to eat sugar and it's going to wake me up. But if you think about it, why do you need to be woken up? Why do you need that stimulant? You only need that if your system is out of balance, if it's not rested, if it's overly stressed. And so then we need external stimulants to keep us going. But they're not really good for our body. Our body then has to process and filter all this out. So then it becomes more stressed and less functional. So we got to really consider, why are we using these stimulants? It's become part of our culture and we're all in agreement to it. We're all in agreement because of the social bonding idea that humans have. And we all enjoy it. We all are stimulated by it. It gives us a positive feeling. So we give each other agreement. Oh, I'm going to have a cake and a coffee every morning because that's what makes me feel good. And the industry, the companies selling it, want you to have this. So they're promoting this culture around it. Happy hour at, in the evening, go and have drinks with friends. These are all stimulants, and we use them as escape mechanisms to mask other negative sensations that we have inside of us. So I could feel stressed or anxious, and then I'm going to go and try externally masking it. So I'll have a drink or I'll eat something because I'm not feeling good inside. So the same as needing the stimulants to energize yourself, being out of balance with recovery and sleep, it's the same with having positive feelings to mask negative feelings or to escape from them. You want to actually deal with the negative feelings so then you don't need to externally stimulate yourself. So there's other ways that we can use or operate our systems, our bodies, to function as best they can. So if I know that I have enough energy stored in my body, and right now I'm probably, between 12 and 14% body fat, which means I can go 6 to 10 weeks without eating any food. I need water, I need some nutrition, but we don't eat for nutrition anymore. We eat for gratification. We eat for comfort. We eat because of culture. So I know I have enough energy. So I don't need to eat today because of energy. I'm actually going to fast. I started today. I'm going to fast for 3 days. So every week I'm going to fast from Sunday night until Wednesday night. So I'm going to fast 3 days, and we'll talk more about fasting. But I don't need to eat. So then the only reason I'm eating is to get nutrition or to stimulate myself. So if I can get my body in order, if I can rest and then purge the stress or anxiety, deal with that, then I don't need anything but nutrition. But we don't eat for nutrition. Eating for us is an adventure. We want something different every day. We want to eat from different cultures. So our microbiomes, our gut, are having to deal with that. The other thing about our microbiomes, that's a bacteria in our intestine, in our stomach, that break down food. And different microbiomes are released at different points in the day. So we'll talk about this in a couple of days when we talk about the rhythms and routines, and we'll talk about circadian rhythm, because based on when you wake up or when your body first detects light, there's a rhythm that starts in your body. And at certain times of the day, we will get these microbiomes that deal with things like sugar. So if you're eating all these foods at irregular times, the microbiomes can't deal with it, and they'll get overwhelmed with bad fungus, with bad